Higher education organizational structure. I think in order to understand academic library organizations, you need to start with understanding the bigger institution. So that's what this presentation is going to be about. A good source of information about higher ed organization is a book called Governing Academia by Ronald E. Irenberg. Especially useful for this slideshow was a chapter by Hammond called Herding Cats in University Hierarchies. Another good source is Olson's Exactly What is Shared Governance, and that's an article from the Chronicle of Higher Education. Hammond begins his chapter by saying that research universities are often described as non-hierarchical, and he gives a few reasons why this is so. One of the reasons he gives is, and this is a quote, department chairs and higher level administrators, for example, find it all but impossible to fire tenured faculty members as long as these faculty members meet minimal standards for teaching and personal behavior towards students. Even the most pugnacious and intemperate critics of the university administration can remain employed until they make their own decision to retire. It is also important to understand that faculty hire and fire their own. Such committees are predominantly made of faculty members who vet the applicants and recommend suitable candidates to the hiring administrator, whether it's a department chair, a dean, the provost, or administrators. This shared hiring process is part of the shared governance that we'll talk about later. Faculty get fired by not making tenure. Tenure, reappointment, and promotion committees made up of candidates' peers, although administrators such as provosts often have the final say on this. And of course, curricular changes come from faculty committees. This setup has led some organizational scholars to label academia as an organized anarchy, but in reality, it's a hierarchy. It's just a little bit hard to understand sometimes, so let's start at the top. There you will find some kind of board, or I should say some type of board, in which authority over the institutional management has been legally vested. According to the Chronicle of Higher Education, all legal authority in any university originates in one place and one place only, and that's its governing board. Whether it's a private college created by a charter or a public institution established by law or constitution, the legal right and obligation to exercise authority over the institution is vested in and flows from the board. Typically then, the board formally delegates the authority over the day-to-day operations of the institution, often in an official memorandum of delegation to the president. To better understand the duties of the president, I'm going to read from Michigan State's description of the president and his duties. The president, as the principal executive officer of the university, shall exercise such powers as are inherent in the position in promoting, supporting, or protecting the interests of the university and in managing and directing all of its affairs. May issue directives and executive orders not in contravention of existing board policies, shall be responsible for business policies as heretofore enacted or modified or thereafter established subject to the general policies established by the board, shall instruct the proper administrative officers to prepare an annual budget which upon approval shall be recommended to the board, shall be responsible for the preparation of annual reports of the board, shall exercise other powers, duties, and responsibilities as are delegated or required of the Board of Trustees. Now, I should point out that that description came from the website of the Board of Trustees, so it was written really from their perspective. The president has authority over all administration functions of the university, but he delegates authority to other officials. To the provost is delegated the supervision of the academic functions of the university. It's kind of interesting to note that whenever a new president is hired, they will often terminate the sitting provost within a few years of his or her hire and bring on an administrator of choice. It's just that it's important that the president and provost can work together, so they often like to choose their own. Michigan State University describes the duties of the provost as such: shall be the principal academic officer of the university and administer the various colleges, special units, and academic support facilities. Shall be responsible for assembling and administrating the academic budget. Shall be responsible for faculty personnel administration, including procedures for faculty appointments and terminations, salaries and promotions, working conditions, and tenure. Shall be responsible, with advice from the faculty, for development of new programs and for keeping existing programs updated and in conformity with university educational policies. Shall be responsible for ensuring that administrative procedures preserve academic freedom and ensure academic responsibility. Shall be responsible for supervising procedures and policies related to the admission of students and liaison with high schools and community colleges. Shall be responsible for supervising the registration process and for the orientation of new students. Shall be responsible for administering academic facilities and support units such as libraries, computer laboratory, instructional development, telecommunication services, and the museum. Shall be responsible for liaison with the State Department of Education. In turn, the provost works very closely with deans and chairs of colleges and schools. Their duties are described as such: a department or chairperson serves as the chief representative of his or her department or school within the university. They are responsible for educational, research, and service programs, budgetary matters, physical facilities, and personnel matters in that jurisdiction, taking into account the advisory of the unit. The chair or the director has a special obligation to build a program that is strong in scholarship, teaching capacity, and public service. So, a quick summary of the hierarchy. Under the provost is the academic personnel, such as deans, directors, and chairs, and also associate provosts or assistant provosts. Under the president are administrators with a more administrative or management responsibility, such as a vice president, the chief information officer who controls the budget, and other administrators who run the operation of the university. Moving on to the concept of shared governance, and what does that mean? It's an often used phrase in academia, but one that is sometimes misunderstood by administrators and faculty. And well, one writer shared the story of a discussion about shared governance like this. A dean chimed in that a faculty leader at her institution actually told her that shared governance meant that professors, who are the heart of the university, delegate governance of their universities to administrators, whose role is to provide a support network for the faculty. He said, in all seriousness, the faculty have the primary role of governing the university. Administrators are appointed to spare them from the more distasteful managerial labor, said the dean with incredulity. That may be a more commonly held notion in academia than it at first appears. I have known faculty senators who regularly refer to the faculty as governance, as in your administration and we're governance. That expression reveals a deep misunderstanding of the mechanism of shared governance and presupposes an inherently adversarial relationship. So what is shared governance? I think the Chronicle of Higher Education offers a good definition. Shared governance has come to connote two complementary and sometimes overlapping concepts. Given various groups of people who share in the decision-making process, often through elected representation, and allowing certain groups to exercise primary responsibility for specific areas of decision-making. One of those areas of elected representation is Faculty Senate. The Senate is often considered the highest governing body for faculty within the university. So back to our hierarchy. Where does the library fall into all of this? If you listen carefully, you might have heard the library mentioned earlier. The library director, dean of libraries or head librarian or whatever title they hold, usually answers to the chief academic officer, which in large universities is usually the provost. So one of these four people we saw before could be a librarian. At a university the size of the Kent State University, the dean would probably answer to the provost. On a smaller campus, a regional or satellite campus, such as the one where I worked, they might answer to an assistant dean, who would be the chief academic officer of the campus. Herding cats was a phrase used by Hammond. You can probably see why now. The shared governance aspect of academia makes it sometimes more cumbersome. There's just so many levels of approval and progress can be very slow. But when it is working well, there's good communication, common goals, and the university prospers.